Imagine, packing your bags, excited about a new life, a new city, dreams, plans, maybe even a new love out there somewhere. But then PFT, gone, just like
Hmm.
that. No goodbye, nothing. Well, that's what happened to Kathy Fry
Yeah.
back in '93, way back then. And today we're going to dive deep into her story.
Yeah, it's a case that's haunted investigators, and it's just captivated the public for, I mean, decades, really. And we've got police reports for this one, court documents, firsthand accounts from Kathy's family, even snippets from psychics. It's a puzzle, missing pieces, narratives that conflict. It's just there's just this lingering question, hangs heavy over everything. What really happened to Kathy Fry?
Yeah, Kathy was a, vibrant 28-year-old
Yeah.
woman from Indiana.
Yeah.
And everyone knew her. Her loved ones did anyway. Just
Right.
Kathy Cat or Lola B. She was close to her family, especially her mom, Delphia. I mean, they spoke on the phone all the time,
Hmm.
like multiple times a day, every day. They shared everything. So when Kathy disappeared, it was a huge shock to her whole family.
Yeah, this wasn't just someone who drifted away. Kathy was about to make a major life change. She was planning to move to Fort Wayne, start school, build a future, the whole 9 yards. She had so much to look forward to.
And get this, she disappeared just days before a super important event in a lawsuit she was involved in. It's almost like a suspense novel.
Yeah, the timing is suspicious, to say the least. It really makes you wonder, was this just a tragic coincidence? Or was
Right.
it something more, something darker, something connected to the lawsuit?
All right, let's go back. November 13th, 1993. Kathy's in Indianapolis. She's wrapping things up,
Mm.
before her move. She decides to go out with some friends, including her ex-boyfriend, John Riker. It seems like a normal Saturday night,
Yeah.
but things took a dark turn, a very dark
He'd bring
turn.
this night out. It's the last time anyone ever saw Kathy. She was with John, like you said, and a few other friends. They were at a party, and the details of what happened that night are just shrouded in mystery and conflicting accounts, so many conflicting accounts.
So the party was at the apartment of Kathy's hairdresser, Dennis, but they call him Joe. It's a small get-together. Joe and his brother Timothy, and their boyfriends Steve and Samuel. 6 people in total, including Kathy and John. And each of their stories about that night, well, they just seem to shift and change over time.
Yeah, the inconsistencies are a major hurdle for investigators in this case. It's like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces, they just don't quite fit.
So John, the ex-boyfriend, he claims he dropped Kathy off at her car around 5 a.m. after the party. He says she was headed to Fort Wayne to, get settled in at her new place. But she never made it.
And this is a big one, a red flag. Kathy's car, a red Mitsubishi Eclipse. It was never found, no sign of it anywhere. And there was no activity on her bank account, no phone calls, nothing, no contact with her family. It's like she just vanished into thin air.
Days turn into weeks and then months. And you can just imagine the worry on Kathy's family's faces. I mean, it's just devastating. The police launch an investigation, and of course, they focus on John, who, he sticks to a story about dropping Kathy off at her car,
Yeah.
but something just doesn't add up. So they ask you to take a polygraph, and, well, let's just say the results weren't exactly in his favor.
Yeah, not one, but 2 polygraphs, given weeks apart, suggest that John wasn't being totally truthful about that night, about what happened. And, of course, polygraphs, they're not admissible in court, you know that, but they definitely raise suspicion.
And those suspicions grow. When you look into John's past, turns out he had a history of violence, including this one disturbing incident with Kathy. At the club where she worked, she was a dancer there.
Oh, right, this incident involved John trying to get back into the club with a gun after being kicked out for arguing with Kathy. It doesn't paint a pretty picture
Yeah.
of their relationship, and it just adds another layer of complexity to the investigation.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, Kathy's family notices that John isn't exactly helpful in the search. No calls checking in, no offers to help search, nothing like that. It doesn't exactly scream concerned ex-boyfriend, does it?
No, not really. His lack of involvement, it really pushed him away from Kathy's family. I mean, they already had their suspicions about him,
Yeah.
and then the tension between them, you could just cut it with a knife. It just got worse as the search went on.
As the police dig deeper, they uncover this strange coincidence that just adds another layer to this case, which is already pretty tangled. Kathy was in the middle of a lawsuit against a doctor and her former employer. And get this, the final deposition was scheduled for November 15th, 2 days after she disappeared.
Wow, that timing is incredibly suspicious. The lawsuit was about complications Kathy had after she had breast augmentation surgery, which was paid for by her employer. He was the owner of a club where she worked. She was suing both of them, the doctor and the club owner. And for her to disappear right before that final deposition, I mean, it just raises so many questions.
And hold on to your hats, folks,
Well,
because this is where it gets even weirder. After Kathy vanishes, the doctor countersues her. Now, I'm not saying there's a connection, but you have to admit, it's a strange twist in an already strange case.
yeah, the countersuit just adds another layer of complexity to everything. And it raises questions about the doctor. What were his motives? Was he trying to intimidate Kathy? Or was it just a legal thing, totally unrelated to her disappearance? It's something investigators couldn't ignore, that's for sure.
So we've got this missing car, a suspicious lawsuit, an ex-boyfriend with a violent past, and a failed polygraph.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough to make anyone's head spin. But the initial investigation, even with all these red flags, it just hits a wall,
Yeah.
The leads dry up, the witnesses clam up, and the case goes cold.
Yeah, the trail goes cold, but Kathy's family, they refuse to give up. They're not going to let her be forgotten. They raise the reward money. They organize searches, hold benefits, even consult psychics. I mean, anything, everything they can think of to keep Kathy's story alive. And, maybe, just maybe, get some answers.
Yeah, they were relentless.
Yeah.
Driven by that kind of love and determination that only a family can have. They even followed a tip from a psychic who told them to search under a specific bridge. Can you imagine that? The dread, the hope, all mixed together as they're digging up this trash bag, just like the psychic described.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaking moment for the family, Just shows you the emotional roller coaster they were on. The bag didn't have Kathy's remains, just some clothes, that's all. But it shows you how committed they were to finding her,
Years pass, and the case just sits there, gathering dust on some detective's desk. But then finally, a glimmer of hope. Detective William Bann. He decides to take a fresh look at the case. He starts digging into those stories again, from the people who were at the party that night. Those 6 people, the last to see Kathy alive. And what he finds, well, it's truly shocking.
Yeah, Detective Bann's decision to reopen the case, it was a big deal, a game changer, really. He brought a new perspective, a fresh set of eyes, and he wasn't afraid. To challenge the original story, his investigation led to some explosive revelations that shifted the whole focus of the case.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What did he find?
So, remember Tim and Steve, 2 of the guys from the party? Well, Detective Bann interviewed them separately. And their stories, years after Kathy disappeared, well, they contradict the initial accounts. And they point the finger right at John.
Whoa, hold on a second. So they changed their stories. What do they say happened that night?
So both Tim and Steve, they claimed that Kathy overdosed at the apartment. Tim, he admitted he was high and drunk, but he remembers hearing someone say, well, damn it, she overdosed. He also remembers seeing Kathy's body being carried down the hallway.
Oh, wow. That's chilling. And what about Steve? Did his story match up with Tim's?
Steve's account was even more detailed, actually. He claims he found Kathy unconscious in the bathroom and dragged her body to the living room. He says that no one checked her pulse, and she never regained consciousness. And here's the most damning part. He says that John, along with Tim and Dennis, they took Kathy's body from the apartment.
Wait, if this is true, why didn't they call for help? Why remove her body? It just doesn't make any sense.
I know, right? Their actions, if their stories are true, suggest they were trying to cover up Kathy's death. Maybe panic set in, or maybe something more sinister was going on. We just don't know.
So what happened next? Did the police go after John? I mean, based on these new statements?
Well, with these new accounts, the police get a search warrant for John's house, the same house he lived in back in '93. They're hoping to find something, anything, some trace of Kathy, some evidence to back up what Tim and Steve were saying. But the search comes up empty, no sign of Kathy, no sign of her car, another dead end.
It's like every time they get close, the truth just slips away. But with 2 witnesses saying John was involved. In Kathy's death, I mean, surely they had enough to charge him, right?
You would think so, wouldn't you? The police, they present their case to a grand jury, hoping to get an indictment. They lay out all the evidence, the inconsistencies, the new testimonies, everything. But the grand jury, they decide there's not enough to press charges.
Man, what a blow to the family. All those years of waiting, those new leads, and still no justice for Kathy.
It's a devastating setback, no doubt. The lack of physical evidence seems like it was the main problem in getting an indictment. It just shows you how frustrating cold cases can be. Time erodes the evidence, those crucial pieces of the puzzle. But despite this setback, Detective Bann, she doesn't give up. He keeps going, following every lead, no matter how small. He checks unidentified remains, follows up on tips. He even investigates a property linked to an outlaw motorcycle gang.
An outlaw motorcycle gang. Now, that's an unexpected twist. Did they find anything connecting Kathy to this gang?
Well, the motorcycle gang connection, it was a long shot, a thread that Detective Ban felt like he had to pull. But just like so many other leads in this case, it went nowhere, a dead end, just adding to the frustration and mystery.
It feels like we're going in circles here, with these glimmers of hope constantly fading into disappointment. But what about Kathy's car? I mean, a car can't just disappear. Did they ever find it?
You're right, cars usually leave a trail. They got a tip and searched a retention pond, near where John's ex-wife lived. Divers actually found a submerged vehicle. Everyone got excited, thinking it was a break in the case. But it wasn't Kathy's car. It was a stolen truck, totally unrelated. Another false hope, another dead end.
This case is like a maze with no exit. You can just feel the family's frustration, their hope fading with each passing year. But they never gave up. They kept fighting. Did they ever suspect anyone else? Besides John, I mean.
Darlene, Kathy's sister, she had her suspicions about another guy, Jeff Schaefer, the brother of Joe and Tim, the guys who hosted the party.
So Jeff wasn't at the party. But Darlene suspected he might be involved. Why?
It was a gut feeling, an intuition that something wasn't right. She tried to visit Jeff at his home, but there were no trespassing signs everywhere, which just made her more suspicious. Felt like he was hiding something.
That's definitely creepy. Did she ever confront Jeff about her suspicions?
She tried, but he wouldn't talk to her. But after Jeff died, Darlene saw a chance to investigate further. The new owners of Jeff's property. They let her search the grounds, hoping she might find something, anything, that could shed some light on Kathy's disappearance.
A glimmer of hope. Did they find anything?
This is where it gets really interesting. The new owners told Darlene about a cellar under the house, dug right in the middle of the kitchen floor.
A secret cellar. You can't make this stuff up. Did they search it? Was Kathy's body in there?
Darlene brought in some professionals. With sonar equipment and cadaver dogs, they got hits in several spots, including near the cellar. Can you imagine? The thought that they might finally find Kathy, after all these years. But after digging and digging, they found nothing.
Another crushing disappointment. But Darlene wasn't done with the Schaefer brothers, was she?
Not even close. She later had this tense encounter with Tim, confronting him about his story, about the inconsistencies. He admitted to lying to the police, about Jeff being at the party. But he insisted he didn't know what happened to Kathy.
So Tim changes his story again. This whole case is just a tangled web of conflicting accounts and dead ends. It's enough to make your head spin.
I know. It's a case where the truth just seems to be constantly shifting, leaving us with more questions than answers. But even with all that, there's a new glimmer of hope.
I mean, it feels like we've looked everywhere, talked to everyone, But Kathy's disappearance is still, it's just a puzzle with no solution. But even with all these dead ends, there's got to be hope.
Oh, absolutely. The Indiana State Police, they actually assigned a new detective to the case, Detective Brandon Alberts. He's going over everything with fresh eyes. He seems pretty optimistic about finding answers.
Yeah, a new perspective can really make a difference. So what's Detective Alberts' approach?
Well, he seems to really get how important the family's involvement is. They've been living with this for decades, piecing together clues, chasing leads. He knows our insights are invaluable.
It's just, it's so sad that Kathy's mom, Delphia, passed away in 2019 without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. That must have been incredibly difficult for the family.
It's just heartbreaking. She never gave up hope, She even wrote a poem about Kathy's disappearance, expressing the pain, the emptiness of not having any answers. It's a really powerful reminder of the human cost of these unsolved mysteries.
Speaking of unanswered questions, we haven't really talked about that lawsuit, the one Kathy was involved in. What do we know about the doctor she was suing? Was he ever a suspect?
There's not much about him in the sources, actually, but the fact that he countersued her, after she vanished, it definitely raises eyebrows, It just seems so insensitive.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. Maybe he had a good reason. Who knows? Or maybe there's something more to it. It's these unanswered questions that keep the speculation going and make us want to find the truth, Oh, and what about the psychics? Do we know if the police ever took those readings seriously?
It's hard to say, really, how much weight they gave them, but one psychic did mention a bridge, remember? And that's where the family found that bag of clothes. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe there's more to this psychic stuff than we realize.
Yeah, it definitely adds another layer of intrigue to an already complicated case. But even if those readings were accurate, they haven't led to Kathy. So we're still left with the same question. What happened to her? Where did she go?
I know, it's a question that's haunted everyone. Investigators, Kathy's family, for years. But even with all the obstacles, there's always hope, maybe with Detective Alberts on the case and the family's continued efforts. And with the public's help, maybe someone who knows something will finally come forward.
That's what we're hoping for. Kathy and her family, they deserve answers. They deserve justice.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you know anything at all, no matter how small it seems, please contact the Indiana State Police. Even the smallest detail could be the missing piece of the puzzle.
This deep dive into Kathy Fry's disappearance, it's a reminder that some mysteries, they just stay unsolved, leaving behind heartache. And so many unanswered questions. It's a story that shows us how important it is to never give up hope, to keep searching for answers, and to speak up if you know something that might help bring closure to this case.
Yeah, it reminds us that these aren't just stories. These are real lives, real families, forever changed by something like this. A sudden and unexplained absence. Kathy Fry's story deserves to be told, and her disappearance, it deserves to be solved.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If you're as into these deep dives as we are, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more intriguing cases. We'll be back next week with another deep dive, uncovering more stories, exploring more mysteries, and hopefully shedding some light on the unknown. Until then, keep those detective hats handy.